Karen, welcome to Necessity versus Commodity. Now, you and I have actually met through multiple networks. You and I actually, a couple of weeks ago, we sat down and talked, and we were just talking about who you are, your brand, what you do for women, kind of going through, obviously, I have a fitness background, and so you and I connected really powerfully there. You were just looking for some advice, and you're a perfect person for this type of podcast because fitness, personal trainers, coaches, they're a commodity most people know they need in their life, but there's very few of them out there like yourself that are such a high level that you are a necessity. You're the one that people should be immediately reaching out to. And also why a long-term coach like yourself really becomes a necessity in their life. So tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, so the audience kind of gets a kind of a 30,000 foot view, because you have a really interesting backstory.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Scott. I started in fitness. I moved to Banff, Alberta, where all the fitness people were when I was like 18, got into training with weights around 21, and women just weren't doing it. But the athletes in Banff were. And so I was watching them in the gym, and it's more interesting. It wasn't necessarily about their physiques. What it was for me was their concentration and their dedication to the program and how they were lifting. What's that?
That's a powerful distinction. A lot of people.
Yeah, very much. And, it was dead silent in the gym, and the women's downhill ski team came in to train. And it was this old makeshift gym, and I'm in one end and they're in the other. They didn't say a word to each other. They didn't have earbuds, no cell phones back then, nothing. And there was about 6 of them, and they were so in tune with the movements and with their bodies that I remember looking and thinking, yeah, I like that physique. But at the same time, I was thinking, I want that dedication. I want that focus. And it really changed me. And that was kind of how I got started into weight training. And it just has kind of blossomed from there.
It's interesting you bring up that focus. That's why I really said it's a really powerful distinction. I had a martial arts background, but when I really started getting in the gym, all you had was bodybuilding magazines, right? Like how to get your 21-inch biceps and just a bunch of garbage information. When I went to a gym, there were some monsters there. There were professional bodybuilders. That's never been a goal of mine. Watching somebody move and control their body very specifically, purposefully, almost like a dance. That's the stuff that was always really intriguing to me and what I always tried to work on. So it's interesting that was one of your focuses. And I see that with a lot of women. It's not about, hey, I want to go jump around in a Zumba class or XYZ, class and just get really sweaty, because that's good. That can be really good just to sweat. But for the majority of the part, you're never improving on the movement. You're never improving on the exercise. You rarely see any change physically. It might feel good in the moment, sweating and those type of things, but there's not that self-discipline, that really self-mastery of your body that is so key there. And I think that's something that makes you so unique of helping women do that, because you have a key for and an eye for that. Now, when you started off in fitness, you and I were talking about some struggles you had, and more specifically, somebody very close to you that you had to really help. Give me a little detail on that with your son.
Yeah, so I would say the first 20 or so years, it really was about training, the commitment. I had a great mentor. He was my boyfriend at the time, and he had a makeshift gym in the basement. And I was just sitting watching him train, and I pulled out a Muscle and Fitness, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners know Muscle and Fitness. And I'm looking through it. It was all men, all men, all men, all men. And there was one little picture, and I still remember her name, Susie Green. And she was on the back cover, and it was like a little business card size picture of her on the pec deck. So she's got her arms out, and she's doing the pec deck, and she's a model. And she said, I use weight training to train my body. And I looked at that and I said to my boyfriend, oh my gosh, look at her. She's beautiful. And he said, well, you can do that too. Just start training with weights. And I had the classic, will I become a man? And he laughed and said, no, you'll become more feminine than you are now. That's just the way the body goes. So he got me on the path. In the first 20 years, I was in Banff, and I was training alongside the athletes. I was taking notes. I worked up at the Canmore Nordic Center, which was the Olympic Center for biathletes and cross-country skiers at the time. And I was at the front desk, and my job was to take all of the journals from all the athletes who were training and put them in a pile when the coaches would come in and pick them up. So they would come in and I would be sitting there looking through. My secret's out now. I don't know if I should be saying this. And I would be going through all the journals, and I would just sit there spellbound for like an hour until the coaches came in, and then I put them all together and hand them off to the coaches. Yeah. That really was my first aha moment in looking at the mindset piece and what they were writing about, you know, how they were envisioning going across the finish line. And it wasn't as much the visual as it was bringing all the feeling into, and you and I know this when it comes to manifestation and all that stuff that we teach. It's a feeling world. It's not a thinking world. And so they had to bring all of their senses in, and they wrote it down, and then they would practice it. And I went, that's it. So I started dreaming about being on stage, and I held that dream for a long time. And I was told, you cannot compete on a stage if you're not doing any kind of drugs. Like you need assists. When somebody tells me I can't do something, that's when I have to do it, because it's just one of those things. And so I trained for about 7 years before my first show. I even went around to a lot of the businesses and asked for donations, because it's expensive to eat well, right? And I had a whole bunch that signed up, and I promised them I would give them a picture of, I would come in top 3. And they said, well, how do you know that? And I said, because I put it out there. I have to now. And sure enough, my first show, I ended up winning the whole thing. And so that kind of drew me into this world of commitment, discipline, yes, but the manifestation and pulling all of your senses into it to create what you want. Because you know, I always say to my women, a lot of them are stuck in the fitness and wellness path. That's who I train and who I work with. You can either worry or procrastinate, or you can create, because it's the same energy, right? And so it just depends on where you put your focus. So that was kind of how I got into it, and how I stayed the path for a long time. My son, as we talked about, my son Tristan, who is 28 now, he was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a degenerative muscle condition. He is now in a wheelchair and needs 24/7 support. But when it hit, I was at the top of my game. I was eating well, I was training, I was winning shows. And when he was diagnosed, I went right down the rabbit hole, and I stayed there probably for 4 or 5 years. It was really, really tough for me to wrap my head around this new process, this new journey that we were just suddenly thrust into. What I realized at that time, which made me change my whole perspective, this is what I teach women now, is that the physical is no match for the mental and emotional and the spiritual. My body broke apart. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. They were doing tests for ALS, for diabetes, for cancer, all sorts of things. I went to one beautiful man. I did a whole thing mystical. I went to all of these different seekers and seers. And one beautiful man said to me, it's just because your heart is broken. And that's where you need to start. And from then on, I've dedicated myself to personal growth, to going outside the box, which is absolutely necessary if women want total health and wellness. And I managed to live a very joyful, very unattached, and full life with my son, whose condition continues to degenerate. So I always say to women, if I can do it, you can do it too. So it really is about recognizing that the strategy piece is really important. The food is important. Absolutely. We have to build cellular health. The movement, the fitness is so important, but it's really only 20%. And the other 80% is the mindset. And that's why I'm so diligent about bringing both worlds together, because if we don't have the mindset, we fall into the 95% of people who start on a healthy living journey, and within 6 to 18 months, they give it up. they have no motivation, they have no willpower. It's really not those things at all. It really is about going inside. And that's my outside the box coaching. That's how I do it. But I had to live through it myself, right?
Yeah, and I have a background helping people reverse rheumatoid arthritis. I had a client who had Fredrickson's ataxia, which is a neuromuscular as well. And majority of the time, if people are diagnosed with that, their body fails by the time they're 25 and they pass away. I started working with him when he was 28, and it's also a condition you're not supposed to be able to have any effect on. And building muscle is one of them. And we put 35 pounds of muscle on in the first year, and he's in his 30s now.
Wow.
So the body is very strong. The thing that allowed him to get success is he wasn't going to give up. Right. And so that mindset, and I've seen that with every single one of my clients, whether it's someone who's trying to lose 20 pounds, someone's trying to hit a new PR, someone's trying to reverse rheumatoid arthritis. The mind is the key part. And when that breaks, like you said, that will break the physical body. And I think a lot of people miss the boat if you don't get your mind right. And you kind of brought up your heart as an example. You don't bring certain emotions. If you're not healthy mentally and emotionally, that's going to show up unhealthy in your body too. And that's where a lot of males and females that you help, they don't get that. Hey, I'm just trying to lose 20 pounds. It won't come off. And they've been doing the same thing for 5 years. Once they work with you, they start realizing, oh my gosh, I've missed 90% of what I needed to do to actually solve the problem. 30 days later, they're in a completely different life. And they actually have a completely different path and outlook of where that's going. Now, one thing you did say, and I want to touch base on this because this is a lot of people that I speak to absolutely disagree with me, and it's kind of a polarizing comment, but I absolutely do not believe and I hate manifestation.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, I figured that might trigger you. Because I see it used by so many people out there, because you brought up the manifestation, but then to get success, you brought up writing down your visualization, your goals. You had a very specific purpose to reach those. If you sat in your closet and just manifested, visualizing over and over and over and over again for the next 12 months, you never would have taken first place on that stage. What you did was you visualized where you wanted to go. You hired a mentor, had a coach, had people to show you exactly what you needed to do every single day. That visualization helped you stay disciplined to take that correct action every single day. Manifestation out there. I tell people all the time, okay, we'll manifest a bag of $50,000 in cash in front of you in the next 7 days, and I will give you $1 million. You can't manifest a bag of $50,000. You can't manifest a good body. You can't manifest a good business. All you can do is take strategic, specific action and be disciplined every single day to get 1% better. And if you're not tracking data, you can't get there, right? Whether it's your body, whether it's a client's results, whether that's your business, whatever it may be, whether it's running your ad campaigns, your marketing campaigns. If you don't have correct data points and you're not targeting those, and if something's giving you a bad result, well, you need to change it. You can't sit there and manifest and think a bad process. Manifesting is going to change a bad process into a successful one. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why I don't agree with the term manifestation, because I think a lot of people out there actually are getting so emotionally damaged internally because their fantasy optimism that, hey, if I just manifest harder, I'm going to get a different result, but they don't change any of the data, any of their actions they're doing daily. So then in 90 days, they're in the same spot. Technically, you and I both know it's actually been a worse spot. And now they're beating themselves up. Well, I just didn't meditate enough today. I didn't manifest enough today. When in reality, no, it's just the actions you're taking, you're not changing.
Well, they're not really manifesting. I mean, it's one thing to envision, but it's another thing. I mean, the hardest part that people have, and I have this with my clients, and I'm on them every week about it, we learn to do by doing.
Correct.
And it's that
100%.
action piece,
It's
right?
the action, yes.
And that builds the muscle, because we have internal muscles as well.
Correct.
Commitment, discipline, tenacity, vision, self-love. all of those are also muscles. And in most people in this area that I work with, they're weak, right? And so I always say,
Well,
it's like,
not weak. They just haven't
it ha-
they haven't performed that task enough to have it be.
that's what I mean. Those muscles
Yeah,
are weak.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean they're weak. I'm sorry.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Those muscles are weak in them, and they need to be trained as well. So
Correct.
yes, I had a vision for the stage, but I also started going on a walkabout, which, you know, is one of those things where I was looking for all things outside the box. I was a meat and potatoes girl. Like, what you see is what you get. That's how I was brought up. And then the universe kind of slapped me silly and said, no, 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 no. In order for you to bring forth what you need to on this planet, which I believe I am here to serve, I think we're all here to serve, I needed to go deeper. And, you know, the universe will whisper until it shouts, and then it shouted. And my son was probably one of the biggest, it was the biggest fall I've ever had. But the other thing is, like, you just don't give up. That's one of my mantras, and it's written on my board: never, ever give up. Why would you give up on yourself? And so the problem with a lot of people is they will envision it, and then we got to step out of the way, but we still have to meet the universe halfway. We've got to work hard. We've got to take the setbacks. We've got to take the feedback when we've fallen away. And all of that stuff is on us. And what I see is there's not as much a strong work ethic as there needs to be.
Great.
Right? And we all are challenged. We all have stuff happening. Why is it during COVID, a whole bunch of people checked out? And I still talk to people that say, well, it was COVID that I gained 50 pounds, or I haven't gotten back on since. Well, that was like a couple of years ago. But I had another stream of women that came to me and said, this is happening. I need to stay on track. Yep. Those women are actually still with me because they had a different way of looking at it, but they were also open to change. And I had a lot of great mentors, but I paid attention. I paid attention because it was important to me, and my body and my health and my life was just tanked, and I had a son to look after. And so I made it my quest, but I've always had that motivation within me ever since I was a little girl. But that's the piece of the women who come to me, is it's not about the outcome so much as the journey along the way and who you're becoming along the way. Yep. And when you allow that stuff to bubble up and you take note and you just grab hold of every little victory, just every little one, eventually it becomes huge. And women often say to me, what keeps you going for so many years? And besides all the backstory, I want to make myself proud. I want to feel good. I want to age well. I want to be well, because I look at what's out there. For the majority, I don't want to age like the majority. But I want to feel proud of myself. And I've had times in my life when I wasn't proud of myself. And I also want to be able to showcase to other women, no matter what's happening in this life, there is a choice here, but you need to go inside. And I've been very diligent about my own personal growth, and I work on my mindset every day. I do my reading, I do my journaling, I do my prayer work. It's really, really important to me because it's who I am, right? Unfortunately, as you probably agree, most people reach for something when the going gets tough. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's Yep. a muscle. You got to build it every day. And in fact, if you start building it when your frequency is up, it has more juice to it. Like when you're down in the dumps and you're not liking your body, you're not liking aging, you've gained 50 pounds, where is the foundation? You need to create a foundation, and it needs to start every day, and you need to do it every single day, no matter how you're feeling. It has to be a commitment.
Yeah. And, you know, the phrase that it's pretty popular, a lot of people know it, and I totally agree, is choose your hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard to be disciplined and work out every day. It's mm-hmm. also hard to be 100 pounds overweight. Yep. It's hard to eat healthy. It's also very hard to eat unhealthy. It's very hard to be broke. It's also very hard to start your own business, right? You get to choose your own hard, and making that choice, because you bringing up the universe, God built the universe, and sadly the universe has fallen into sin. And so the law of thermogenics, everything is rapidly decaying faster and faster and faster and faster. So the law of the universe is actually everything is getting constantly worse, and that is just speeding up quicker. So you've got two choices: fight against that and become better, or get pulled down with that and constantly become worse, right? And, to your point, like that's what I used to tell all my clients too. I know that you have a goal to lose 40 pounds. Awesome. My goal is to teach you everything. So when you're 90, you're going to be able to climb a mountain if you want to, right?
Exactly.
And that's really huge. But some people aren't even visualizing that because they've got 20 pounds to lose and they've been trying for 5 years to get that 20 pounds off. They can't even think beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talking about you and your program, right? Like, what makes you a necessity? What separates you from everybody out there? What makes you elite is really the important thing, right? Like, I know fitness is a key aspect, but you're talking mental strength, emotional strength. You're talking about being able to look in the mirror, really take some self-assessments on yourself. But you also have a lot of very unique ways and modalities that you help women through areas. So, go through some of that. So if a woman's watching this right now, that she knows when she sets a time up to speak with you or starts following you or working with you, that she's in the right places because everything you're going to be doing with them.
Well, I think a lot of it is with every client, every woman that comes to me, we do a deep dive into the unconscious. We have an exercise that we do, and it takes time. It takes about a week or two, and then we continue to mold it. But we have to look at the beliefs. We have to look at the self-sabotaging. This is where I often hear women say, I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. And what I say is, no, you don't know what to do. It's not about, oh, I'm not staying on track, I need to make more time, or this happened or that happened. What happens is that throws them down into what I call the shame guilt cycle. And when they're down in those lower frequencies, now you can call it woo, you can call it whatever, but even science knows this. Look at a guy who's won the lottery versus a guy whose wife just dumped him. There's a very different physiology. And when you're down in the lower, heavier emotions, but you're trying to create a healthy body, healthy habits, healthy journey, it's not going to work. You're out of sync, you're out of alignment. So the beliefs have to support your goals. If your goals are to lose 50 pounds, to age well, to be able to stay on track, the belief system in 99% of the women that I work with are not on track. It's only because we weren't taught this stuff. It's not taught in schools. Rarely is it ever taught from our family, just because they don't know and they can't pass on what they don't know. So it's nobody's fault. This is on us.
There and kind of sit there a little bit for a second.
Yeah.
Because that's a big belief of mine too. Like people like, hey, you need to focus better. When were you taught focus?
Yeah.
You never were,
Yeah.
right? Like it really is crazy. But you talking about, I understand it because I've been in personal development and 25 plus years. And so the subconscious belief, a lot of people don't understand that in reality, 24 hours a day that you're awake, you make like 70,000 different choices, right? But mathematically, studies show that 60,000 of them plus aren't even conscious. It's kind of like you go to grab your toothbrush, everyone grabs with the hand you always do. You brush the exact same way, you don't change it. All of these things are just habitual. Most people don't realize that their brain is a lot like a phone. You have all these apps running in it. Mm-hmm. Well, you need to update the software. You need to update the apps. And so that subconscious part, those are the things that actually cause a lot of your habits. And you brought up, like, I know what to do. No, you don't. Otherwise, you'd be doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Or then because your habits are stuck in, you don't know how to break them. Even if everyone knows, hey, chicken and broccoli is better than McDonald's, right? Like that's obvious. Everyone knows eating an apple is better than a Twinkie. That stuff's obvious. But to actually, for you to get a result, you to start making a change tomorrow, it's not as simple as me writing you a workout plan and a diet plan for most people because of the system that's just kind of running in their subconscious. So you talked about a deep dive. Mm-hmm. Most women don't, and men out there, they don't even understand what that truly means. And you said, hey, this is a week process. Give a little bit more of a look behind the curtain, what that would look like. Like, hey, day one, we're gonna, some of the things I go through with my clients, I have them take some personal assessments. We track some habits, we take a look at some stuff, and then when we do a deep dive, we're looking at why they're making that, and then when we make changes, hey, what emotion popped up when you tried to make a change? What was the thought process? right? Because those are going to be some of the guiding lights of what's going on. So give me an idea, like that process in the first 2 weeks, because that truly is going to really set the client and the woman that works with you
Yeah.
for success in the future. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be one of our secret sauces, if you can call it secret. I don't call it a secret. I think everybody should learn it. So I start with 4 questions. It's called getting the junk out. And basically what we need to do is bring those unconscious beliefs, which are unconscious.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, I know what I need to do. Let's just hang out here for a minute. They need to bubble up. And so I'll ask a question. What are your fears around losing weight, getting a body transformation? Where do you feel other people might be offended? And so we go through these questions, and I can give you some examples. One lady, and I just said, go with it, go with it. If it's 1 sentence, I want 10. Like, I want you just to let it bubble up, take time, come back to it after having some tea or whatever, because it's like the psyche does not want to give it up, right? Because the psyche just wants everything to stay the same. And if you study psychology, which you do, I know, but for our listeners, it's like new stuff comes in the brain, the thinking part of the brain. And what it wants to do is it wants to shove it back to the habitual part here so that it runs on remote control. So that's kind of like when we first learned how to drive, everything, I know it was a long time ago, but everything was hyper vigilant. We're worried about hitting the mailbox and are we going over the line? Well, now we can drive without even thinking. We can drive, 5 miles and go, oh my gosh, I don't even remember going that way. It's because the brain has put it back into the back area where it's just going round and round on remote control. It's because the brain does not want to exert any more energy than it needs to, because this body of ours is all about survival. So it always wants to retain all the energy it can, which is another reason why cardio isn't good for metabolism. We can talk about that later, because the metabolism slows down to compensate. So the questions come up. There was one lady who I worked with, a lovely lady, and she was so into all of this, like a sponge. Women, when people are a sponge and they want to learn and grow, truly learn and grow, they make the best clients, as you know.
Great.
And she was writing down everything, and she said, one key thing, I've always been the matriarch of the family. All of my women in my family were bigger. People come to me for advice. I don't know who I am if I lost the weight. So her role was wrapped up in her body, kind of like, the leading lady who was big in portion, and she managed her family. As soon as that came up, she went, whoa, that was crazy. And so she defined herself by who she was, and she was not comfortable losing the weight. So she went more into the personal growth, and the weight loss was quite slow. But what she did was she circumvented everything. She looked at, what does it mean to, to be a woman in this day? What does it mean? She had stuff with her family that needed healing. She had a lawsuit she was fighting at work. All of this stuff. We looked at triggers. We looked at personas. We looked at who's showing up. What she came to recognize was that she was really deep in victim energy. And she was always feeling like a victim to everything in her family, in her work, in her community. Once she recognized that, she went, oh my gosh. And so then the weight started coming off, because she was applying, but also sometimes the body will hold on if it's constantly under stress too. Another lady, I love her. She was great. She said, if I lose the weight, I might want to leave my husband. I went,
that's a big
that was
reason not to
huge.
change. Yeah,
absolutely. And there is a risk, and that's one of the questions I ask. Who do you think is going to be upset? Because when we get healthy in ourselves, we can act like a mirror that reflects back to other people how unhealthy they are, right? So I always have to ask about the spouse or the partner. Are they on board? What will happen? Because that's a big piece. This is not just a woman going on a healthy living journey. It's a family. Yeah. And there are some women that can do it without the family support. But if there's somebody undercutting them, rarely is it ever successful because we want to keep the peace.
Yeah. Well, and it's always interesting when you're working with somebody and going through some of that stuff. And some people, the phrase fear of success is often used. It's a very good umbrella term, but when you do dig deeper, it's never a fear of success. It's actually lots of times it's a fear of failure in some other area, right? And like skydiving as an example, I've jumped out of an airplane a lot. I love it. I've seen people, there's really three type of people whenever I've seen jump. The first group, they see the plane, they freak out, not even getting on. I'm done. I thought I could do it. I can't. They sit down, boom. The next two groups of people hop on. You're going up, you're at 13,000 feet, the door opens. I scooch to the edge, jump off, boom. Group number two, they scooch to the edge, can't do it. Right?
That would be me.
and you're afraid to, and it's not that you're afraid to be on an airplane, right? And that first group wasn't afraid of an airplane either.
Yeah.
What you're afraid of is the failure that's not going to happen and you're going to hit the ground and die, right? So it's not a fear of success. It was a fear of the failure that was a problem. But the big thing out of those three groups, watching the three groups afterwards has always been, you and I both know that watching people, learning from people is so just magnificent. I land, and a bunch of other people do. We're all excited and just love and have this great thing. Like, oh my gosh, that was so good. The other two groups, they have a regret that's going to last them the rest of their lifetime that they never did that. Yeah. And that carries as well. And so when we're talking about some of these subconscious, when we're talking about some of these actions, like you said, she was wearing a bunch of different hats, wearing different victim mentalities, fear of, hey, and talking about the other lady, if I lose this weight, I might want to lose my husband. I'm not going to lose this weight because then my marriage is a failure if I leave him, right? So it's really interesting how many reasons really do bubble up of why people don't reach some sort of level of success in whatever area of life it is. And if you're not diving into that, if you're not reaching the result, it
stays unconscious. Yeah. And it runs the show. Your unconscious runs the show. So the 5 fear questions too is part of the exercise that we do. And we have, when it comes to body transformation work, there's 5 main fears: fear of success, for sure, fear of failure, fear of being rejected, meaning who's going to get ticked off because you're doing this. Fear of what do I have to give up? Oh, I'm going to be in a prison. I'll never be able to eat my food again, or, whatever, because a lot of people, they want it, but they don't want to change their life. And then fear of being unworthy. That's probably the biggest one. Who am I? And we see this a lot with women, maybe more so than men. Who am I to spend time or money or effort on myself? I am, and this is where I go into archetypes. We have a whole exercise around archetypes: the people pleaser, the fixer, the busy bee, the good wife, right? The good mother. Who am I? Because I've been taught as a woman on this planet, I have to take care of everybody else. But the interesting thing is, as you said, things are shifting and the world is shifting. Things are moving faster and everybody talks about it, but it's actually happening because things are speeding up. I have women coming to me in their 40s and 50s and 60s where our lives are half over. And this is where I say, well, how do you want to live? You're in the fall of your life now. What does that mean? And there's this awakening happening with women where they're kind of still caught between two worlds. Well, I'm supposed to be over in this old world where my mother and grandmother taught me we take care of. And there's that shame guilt piece. But I really want to go over here and start investigating, who am I? Like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And the challenge is they often look to the body first and go, my body, my aging is not happening. All of that discontent they put on the physical because it's visual, right? And women are defined by their bodies and their beauty and their youthfulness. That's just the way it is. But really, it's all this other itchiness under the surface. So that's why we must go into mindset. We have to go into beliefs. We have to go into a strategy around that and update the operating system, because it's really not about the body. The body's important. The way I see it, especially having a son with his condition, the body is our vessel that we take through life, and we need to honor it. There are too many people in this world who don't have the gift of health for reasons outside of their own doing, and there are people that do have the choice, and they're just treating their body so poorly. It catches up. There is a point of no return. And I actually have some people saying, well, where's that point? Almost like they want to go up to the point, and then they'll change. It's like, no, because we age faster as we get older. I know it's kind of a weird saying, but I've noticed it going through my 40s and 50s, now my early 60s, and it definitely starts to speed up. And Father Time is at work, but we have these beautiful vessels that are taking us through this world. So we need to honor it. We need to build cellular health. We need to manage our mindset. We need to work from the heart and get the spirit, the soul, whatever you want to call it, connected, reconnected to the body, because too many people are checked out. And so in my work, we use the emotional guidance system, which was coined by Gary Zukav many moons ago, where we're starting to recognize when you get triggered. And this is what happens a lot. When you get triggered, where are you feeling it? I always say the what and where. What are you feeling, and where in the feeling are you in the body are you feeling it? So some women may carry it in their throat, their anger's here. Some carry it in their chest. When you're being taken out of your power, they often feel in the solar plexus. Well, that's the third chakra. That's our power place. So of course I deal with chakras as well. So all of this stuff is just different ways of coming to the same place. You've got to go within and rise up. Call to rise up, right? Because when you're up here, operating from up here, you want to feed your body well. You want to move your body. It's not a prison when we say you need to move your body every day. You need to feed it well. And when people have that mindset, and this is the mainstream stuff that I can't stand. It's like, oh, another diet, or another tell me what to eat, or it's like we're sending them off to the jungle, and they have to switch that around, because unless we do a deep dive and switch it around, out of do I have to I get to, even better, I choose to, then we're going to be able to be on this path and not fall away like 95% of the people out there, not be pulled out of our healthy living journey. And honoring our bodies and our mindsets and our lives, because that ripple effect goes out into the world, right?
And that's the most important part, right? Like, yeah. I said this to you earlier, before we even started this episode, of that's one of the things of looking at some men, and talking about, hey, how to like market towards men, of really realizing, hey, what you're doing, of how to be mentally and physically strong, so you're confident whether you're stuck in the back alley in a really bad situation, or you're walking to that boardroom to take over that meeting to be extremely successful in your business life, or even in your bedroom with your relationship, right? Like, the physical health is part of that, but the mental health and the confidence that comes with it. And you brought up some unique stuff about kind of society, nowadays. It always amazes me how many people, the moment they step out of school, they never read another book. Yeah. Well, I kind of call it the Al Bundy syndrome. Where hey, I threw 4 touchdowns in a high school football game, right? Like, that's the pinnacle when you were 17, 18 years old. That was the pinnacle, your physical health. You haven't read a book. Like, the pinnacle, your mental health and intelligence was like when you graduated school. Like, you completely stopped learning, and now you're just going through subconscious mode, degrading faster, and wondering why all of a sudden now you're 40, 50, 60 going, what happened to my life? What happened to my body? Why am I stressed out? Why am I depressed? What are all these things going on? Well, you've been running on autopilot for 20 years. You haven't grown physically. You haven't grown mentally. You haven't grown spiritually. You haven't learned anything. You haven't tested yourself. All of these things that make life worthwhile, you haven't done in 20 years. Why would you expect to be in a good place? And texting me going, hey, can you send me a workout program and a diet? Like that's magically going to fix it.
Exactly. And what
That's
were
the
you doing?
biggest problem.
But I mean, we're defined by the 5 people we hang with, right? But also, and every time I'm with one of my women on a group or a one-on-one call, whatever, I'm like, okay, what was your morning mindset ritual? Okay, great. So you spent 20 minutes doing that, right? What about the other 23 hours and 40 minutes, right? So we can't just do one little, I always say everybody wants to do a gratitude list. Gratitude list is very powerful, but it's not going to get you to where you want to be. And a lot of people just parrot the same gratitude list, right?
Yeah.
It is about if you're journaling, I read every day, even if I'm just picking up a page, because it gets me into that mindset state that I need to be in. The more you do it, the faster it clicks, but you got to carry it with you. That's the deal. You can't just meditate or do your prayer work or whatever it happens to be to fuel you, if it's truly fueling you. And this is what Joe Dispenza talks about all the time. You got to get up from that yoga mat and carry that with you. That is the key. And we have to keep nourishing ourselves in that way every day. So I'm always saying, what was your morning mindset ritual? What are you reading these days? What is your ecosystem? Because your ecosystem is there to support you. So in my community, I have my women who've been with me for a long time. They're the ecosystem that lift everybody else up. Because what happens is we may have a healthy movement plan or a healthy food plan, and we take it with us. And this is what we see in mainstream. And then they go home to their world where nobody's supporting them doing that. Accountability and support is so important.
Yep.
So as a coach, we have to be on our game, and we're always up leveling ourselves as well. But that's where most people are, I call it do-it-yourselfers. And I ask women, how long have you been doing it yourself? And is it really working? It's like, I give the analogy of the mechanic. If your engine craps out, you're not going to get under the hood and fix it yourself. You're going to take it to a certified mechanic. But there's so much information out there that, again, women think, I have all this information, I have a body, I have food, I should be able to put it together. It's not working.
Correct.
It's not working.
Yeah. And, the one thing I love about your program when you work with a client, and I hope everyone picked up on that, but you said when I do one-on-one sessions, I'm sorry, if you're trying to do fitness and you're in group exercise classes, hey, they're good for the sweaty, right? Hey, if you're and you're showing up to a Zoom call with 10 to 20 people, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because there's nothing focused really on where you're struggling. And so therefore you can't fix it. You can get certain pieces that matter. Like you said, a lot of the information you can go on YouTube, Google, you can get that stuff for free, right? It's not about the information. It's about, are you applying in your life? Are you able to do a correct assessment? Are you able to dig deep yourself? No, you aren't. It's why you need a mentor, right?
Yeah.
And biblically speaking, which a lot of the stuff when I'm going through stuff with clients, I'm going through on a Bible aspect as well. You have to submit yourself and submit to the flesh every single day, and sacrifice that flesh, submit to the cross. The goal of, drop everything and follow Jesus. Drop all the sins, drop all the bad stuff, really discover who you are so you can be going forward and bring the best version to yourself every day to the world. And like you said, that has a ripple effect throughout everything. Majority of the time, it's just a bunch of information. It's a bunch of fluff. It's a bunch of, I know you kind of brought up the woo-woo thing, or just a bunch of just general generic information that we all know. And that's not it, right? Like there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. You can have all the knowledge in the world. If you haven't applied it, you don't have any wisdom because you didn't take the action. You didn't get the results. You didn't go through the process.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of it every single day. That's why, like when I'm coaching a client, you're sacrificing the flesh every single day. You've got to do that in your mind, your body, and your spirit. And we're moving forward. You have to have these very specific directions, so you know which actions to take. And then you can gauge yourself, like you talked about, like what came up, where'd the emotion, where do you feel it? Like you have to understand that. And most people don't have even the slightest grasp on what it takes to do that. And to do it yourself, I know that you're aware, it's very hard. And there have been plenty of times in my life I've tried to do it myself.
Yep.
It's a struggle. You need somebody else there.
Yeah, and you want to have somebody who's you know, possibly a little bit more elevated because they're going to draw you up.
Mhm.
And I find most people, we're in a blaming, complaining society, and that's where most people get their juice from. And it's just so it just doesn't work. And so I'm pretty, you know, I'm careful about who comes into the program. I can see the potential in them when I'm talking to them, because we need to have a talk first
Yeah.
to make sure that it's a fit. But you know, if I'll say, how committed are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, I'm an 8. Well, where's the other 2? We have to dig in there, right? It's almost like people are afraid to commit, or for some people, they're afraid to feel joy or to feel happy again. And there's so much defined by who they're surrounding themselves with, what they're reading or not reading, whatever. And it really does become, we all need mentors, and I still have my little I've had 3 mentors in my life. I've had going on 30 years now. They're friends. They're also there to tell me the truth, because you know, sometimes, and you know too, Scott, sometimes we have to be truth tellers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard, but I always know the intention behind what I say is always coming from a place of caring. I'm never there to shame or hurt. But sometimes, what's that saying? Sometimes when you see somebody drowning, the best thing for them is to put your foot on their head so that they come into their power, so that they're coming up to save themselves.
They,
And
because they need that breath of air to survive, so they actually
yep,
fight for it. Yep.
yep. And they are so stepped out of their power, they don't even know what it feels like anymore. And so, you know, I teach things like resistance versus flow. You're either expanding or contracting. There's nothing in between. Check in. What are you feeling? If you're tight, you're contracted. Where are you sitting with this? So it really is coming to understand your vibration or your frequency, where you are, what's your emotional home. If you are seeing the world as a victim, or if you are a lone wolf, again, another archetype, they're the toughest to coach, the lone wolf, because they'll just go in their cave.
You're telling me. You're
They
telling me.
won't admit if they fell. They don't want to come to the one-on-one or the group call because they're not doing well. That's when coaching matters, real coaching. Everybody's calling
And I'm a
themselves
lone
a
wolf.
coach.
That's the funny thing. Yep.
Yeah, I am too. But so that's why I know them. But the only way to growth is to be vulnerable, and you need to be witnessed in that vulnerability. And that's where coaching matters. It is a skill set. I see too many former competitors calling themselves a coach. They have no idea what coaching is. So a trainer trains the workout and a coach coaches the person. And so our role is to help them get out of the wobbles, because wobbles are important, because that's where we can get feedback. Grab them in a wobble and we can reframe. We can reframe it and create a stronger piece to add into their self-identity. Because nobody's broken. Everybody has discipline. Everybody has commitment. I say this to my women all the time. You've raised a family. You have a mortgage. You know, you're in a marriage. Like, everybody has that, but they check out in other parts. It's like, no, let's bring that value system in. What would a successful person with successfully losing 50 pounds, running their world, aging beautifully, excited about the future, what are their values? What are their traits? Well, it's discipline and commitment and tenacity and self-love. Exactly. So all we do is we take it from this drawer over here and we have to move it over there. But it takes time, and it takes proper coaching to be able to, and also takes a willing client, you know, right? Some clients are not
You can
willing.
get a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that belief system. So, you know, we look at the confirmation bias, we look at negativity bias, we look at the fear bias. This is all built into our brains. We are reactive instead of responding. This is just part of who we are. We look at how the neurotransmitters fire and all that stuff, because it kind of takes the blame away from my women and going, oh, that's my physiology. Let me come to understand this, and then I can manage it. And so we have something called putting a chink in the chain, which is where if you're sitting down to Netflix and all of a sudden you want to have, you know, your chips, because there's that, you know, action reward in the brain. That's how the neurotransmitters are formed. You don't want to just minimize and just say, well, I'm going to have a lower calorie food, because that firing is still happening. That operating system is still firing in the old way. So a chink in the chain is do a totally different action to uproot it. That's the first thing we have to learn. Go for a walk, go throw a ball for your dog, go have a bath. And what happens is the brain is unseated and it goes, oh, wait a minute, you're breaking the path here. Exactly. Yeah. Then we have to insert new. That's all we're doing. And it relieves women of thinking there's something wrong with me, or how come I can't do this? So we start with the basics of how we're wired, and then we have to go into the bigger vision. What do you want? Like, where do you want to live from? Yeah. And that's almost where some women are afraid to dream. They're afraid to dream.
Yeah, they are. Right? And that's part of, going back to jumping out of an airplane. You're so scared to fail that you won't even allow yourself to look what success looks like. And that's where now you have two sides of you battling, tearing you apart. So then, like you said, you can't even take the right action stepping forward, because you have these two things battling. You have the natural reaction and triggers you're just going through. You've got so much going on. That's why women and men get stuck in that overwhelm. Why can't I change? And they just freak out, and they just get stuck in that panic zone. And it's so important. Like you said, having a mentor to help you through that is really key. Mm-hmm. One of the things, before we wrap up here is, a woman starts with you. She goes through this journey with you, whether it's 90 days from now or 12 months from now, 5 years from now. Really, who does that woman become? Because again, it's not, losing 20 pounds is awesome. Losing 50 pounds is awesome. Knowing that you're going to be 80, 90 years old, climbing a mountain, the physical body is there. But the mindset and all those beliefs, who does that woman really embody? So if a woman's reaching out to you because she's not happy with where she's at in her life right now, and she knows she needs to take care of herself mentally, physically, and get back on the right path here, help her dream. Who is she going to become? Who are your clients becoming?
Well, there's two classes. One is a woman who forgot who she was, how great life was. We go back, where was that time for a lot of us is in our 20s, right? And then they recognize how slowly things slipped away. Those women, I love working with all women, but those women, because they know they can always find that place of joy. Because I always ask women when I'm working with them, when I'm assessing them coming in, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your joy? And I can usually feel it before they say it. It's usually between a 3 and a 5. Okay, where did we lose along the way? It takes a bit of time, but they can usually find it. Now, the women that are tough to work with, and this is really hard, is sometimes there are some women that have never felt joy, ever. And those ones are they're really hard to pull out of the cave. Yeah. And that's a really sad statement in our society. So, we have to assess, okay, what is the strategy? Then we have to move a little bit more to strategy and just let the mindset be for a bit, because they can't even contemplate it. Mm-hmm. So this is where we always look at mentors, or if you could, who inspires you? Because we need to be inspired. Inspired action is the best kind of action, right? And overcoming those challenges. But there are some cases where it's very, very, very tough. And we do our best with those people.
And after working with you, who do they become? What do they see? It's hard when you're talking fitness sometimes. Yeah. Right? Like, yeah. It's not like, hey, I saw my bank account go up $10,000. This was a success, right? And that's hard sometimes to really quantify sometimes fitness for some people. And fitness, obviously, you do way more than that. You and I both understand. I think most people now have a better grasp of that. What is some of that? Let's just put it as return on investment. Like, who do they become? Like, what are they going to see? What's the reason why? I mean, it should be a no-brainer, I think, for most women to reach out for you. but how do they know it's going to be a no-brainer? What can they look forward to really becoming working with you?
Well, I mean, throughout the program that I teach, we have different tools in our toolkit. And so we have those and we amass them along the way so that they have something to draw on when the poop hits the fan or when something happens. They have, oh, I can draw on this, whatever that tool, whatever that skill set is. So they need a new skill set and they have an expanded toolkit. And it's a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle. It really is. And I ask women, how do you want to live? How do you want to feel? I want my women to walk into a room, click on her heels and have everybody in the room go, oh my gosh, look at her. What has she been doing? To have that energy, that vitality, that confidence. Most women say they've lost their confidence. And the physical stuff, feeling fatigued, not being able to sleep, having aches and pains, all of that stuff. They're not the problem, they're the symptom. But it's that confidence piece. And really, it is about remembering who they are and returning them to self. It really is. And we just lose ourselves along the way. We have a lot of life. We have a lot of, I always say, if you choose to change today, you wake up tomorrow, you're already on another path. And then in a week, a month, a year, you've got all that learning behind you, because this is not about going wider. This is about going deeper. Right. And it's not about information, because information is not transformation. This takes time. It takes a certain skill set. It takes vulnerability on both sides, both coach and client. They both have to be in it together. And it really is about them entrusting you and you showing up for them 100%. And that's what a good coach needs to do. They have to be there, not 24/7, but 100% and know, but also find somebody who is living the life that you want, who's walking it, living it, who's feeding their bodies well, who's, gone through challenges, all of that stuff. That's the person you want in your world, not the 25-year-old. Sorry, no offense to the 25-year-old trainers, but for me in my field, women over 40, 50, 60, we need to find those mentors, because that's the inspiration that we need. So is she walking the walk? I always say to my women, I'm walking the walk right alongside you. I am not on a pedestal. Oh my gosh. I'm very open about my challenges and my years going through stuff and all, because we all go through it. I'm not ashamed of my problems and my past, because it makes me who I am, but I'm able to meet women where they're at, no matter where they're at, no matter how broken they feel. It doesn't matter. There is no judgment. It is okay. Let's pick you up. Let's see what we can do. We can move anybody through as long as there's just a slight willingness and a little bit of spark. That's all that's needed. That's why we're here.
Yep. And then you turn that spark into a burning flame and get
Yeah.
on the path of success. And I absolutely love it. And, I know that your clients just have amazing change in their life. Transformation sometimes is such an overused word when you truly say that, over 20 years, me doing this with people as well. And I know you've experienced it from other talks you and I've had. When you get that call from somebody or a text message randomly, from someone, even a client you haven't talked to in like 5-6 years, maybe you worked with them 10 years ago, and they thank you still to this day for changing their life and saving their life. I mean, that is so powerful. Most people don't get that. And I know that you provide that for your clients. And so, and Karen, I want to say thank you for coming on and doing an episode. And I would love to do another episode, have you back on and go deeper into things and just follow up, see how things are going as well. So is there any one last thing that maybe you would want to share with the audience before we go?
Oh, I'm so appreciative of this, Scott. Thank you so much. Just know that there's no challenge you can't overcome. And we're here to live and lead by example. One thing that I hear some of my former clients, they come out with it and I'm like, oh yeah, I taught you that. Love yourself into health. Just love yourself into health. That's all, really. And when you're coming from that place, because there is nothing else, there's no fear, there's no anger. It's really just an absence of love. And this is about self-love and self-worthiness And when you're coming from that place, you can't do wrong. So that's what I hope that I bring to women to inspire within. And that's where I come from as a coach. And I thank you so much for this. There's so much worth in this. So thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. We'll schedule a time to have you come on soon. I can't wait.
Beautiful. Thank you.